Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 856 for the 2nd of March, 2025. Richard Saunders coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Yes, the Skeptic Zone podcast, your oasis of sanity in a world gone completely bonkers. And people have been warning me about doom scrolling and watching the evening news. It's much safer to listen to the Skeptic Zone. And when you listen to the Skeptic Zone podcast this week, you're going to find out about the missing Beaumont children, the case of the missing Beaumont children way back in 1966, one of Australia's most famous, or possibly infamous is the better word, case of missing children. 3 children went missing from an Adelaide beach on Australia Day, the 26th of January in 1966, and no trace of them has ever been found. But this didn't stop people this week digging once again, nearly 60 years later, an old factory site. I'm pleased to say this was not because of misinformation given them by so-called psychics. But find out more about this whole interesting but sad affair coming up at the top of the show, where we revisit the mystery of the Beaumont children. After that, it's once again off into space with our latest adventure in the adventures or misadventures of Psychic Penny and her friends. This week's episode was written by Meta AI. Now, every week we have a chapter of this space opera, and we simply give a different AI engine an overview in the cast, and it writes the script. What's going to happen this week? Tune in to find out. Following that, it's a follow-up. Following that, it's a follow-up to a story we ran last week about a reviewing In Search of Water Seekers, the 1970s, 1980s series with Leonard Nimoy. I've since then found a review of the very episode we were talking about, published in a newspaper at the time. An interesting read. Find out more later on. Then to round off the show, it's the Australian Skeptics newsletter, read by Adrian Hill and written, of course, by Tim Mendham. Hello, Tim. Now, don't forget, and before we get into the show, don't forget that the Surf Coast Skeptic Camp is coming up. A wonderful excuse to get out of Melbourne, go down to the coast along the Great Ocean Road to Aireys Inlet. And this is going to be a very, very interesting day. It's on the 15th of March. You've got time to arrange your plans, from 10:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And the featured speaker is none other than Karen Bickersma. And I think Karen Bickersma might know the skeptical fairy angel, the skeptical angel fairy, you know who I mean. She used to be the Tooth Fairy. Anyway, Karen Bickersma will alert the audience to online subterfuge with reading between the lies, applied rhetoric in the digital dating era. That's going to be a very interesting and important talk, and I'll be appearing too via Zoom or video or pigeon or somehow. For more information and to reserve your place, which is free, visit tinyurl.com/SCSC2025. Well, that's enough for me at the moment. It's time for me to run downstairs. Where's that coffee and toast and peanut butter and honey? While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. At the time of recording this particular segment of the Skeptic Zone podcast, the date is Tuesday, the 25th of February. And over the past 1 to 3 days, coming into 4 days, a dig has been occurring, an excavation in the city of Adelaide in South Australia. Why? This has been billed as probably the last decent chance of finding the remains of the Beaumont children. 3 very young children disappeared in Adelaide on the 26th of January 1966. So next year will be the 60th anniversary of their disappearance. The reason this particular case is of interest to skeptics is the most famous case in Australia to date of a psychic being brought in to help to try to find the missing children. And I cover this in detail in the Skeptic magazine and on the Skeptic Zone podcast way back in 2018. I wrote a report about this psychic, a Dutchman by the name of Gerard Cosset. The report is called The Blind Seer. And of course, without giving any spoilers, he did not help one little bit. This new excavation, I'm pleased to say, has been conducted on the basis of non-psychic information. This is researchers and other interested people piecing together bits of information to draw a hopeful conclusion. To date, as of the date of recording, no firm evidence has been found of these children buried under the soil in a site of an abandoned factory. This site is scheduled to be redeveloped into housing, so indeed this is probably the last decent opportunity they have to search this site. If there are any developments in this ongoing dig, you would have heard about them already at the top of the show. I would have certainly mentioned them at the beginning of this episode. So as I sit here on a Tuesday, who knows what the rest of today, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, who knows what that might bring us. But with this recent dig, I was interested to revisit the whole affair of Gerard Cosset, this so-called psychic from the Netherlands who came out here to Australia way back at the end of 1966. Now, when I was researching this story back in 2018, I did a lot of gathering of newspaper reports, but recently I've come across many more, written at the time, which really more or less align with the reports I had already gathered. And anybody who listens to the Skeptoid podcast with Brian Dunning, you would have heard me on a recent episode talking about the importance of going back to the original sources of a story. So in my case, it's the Trove archives and other archives of newspapers. Invaluable. And another thing I will say about this search is I've looked at the reasoning behind the search. There was a TV special on the other night with possible ideas and the thinking behind this new search. And to my way of thinking, it's a bit tenuous, but at least it's not based on magical thinking and dreams and tarot cards and visions. So I earnestly hope this new find can find the remains of these children and put a society to rest, really, because when they disappeared in 1966, it was a huge and terrible event. But to give you a quick overview of the case in general, the Beaumont children disappeared from Glenelg Beach near Adelaide, South Australia, on the 26th of January, which was Australia Day, still is. And the wiki page says, in a suspected abduction and murder, that is yet to be formally known, but it's widely thought that that was the case. Police investigations revealed that on the day of their disappearance, several witnesses had seen the three children on or near Glenelg Beach in the company of a tall man with fairish to light brown hair and a thin face, with a sun-tanned complexion and medium build, aged in his mid-30s. Despite numerous searches, neither the children nor their suspected companion were located. And further down the page we have Gerard Cosset. The Beaumont case attracted international attention. On the 8th of November 1966, Gerard Cosset, a Dutch psychic, maybe that should be changed to put the word psychic in inverted commas. What do you think, Susan Kerbeck? Was brought to Australia to assist in the search, which caused a furor in the press. Unsurprisingly, Cosset's efforts proved unsuccessful, with his story changing day to day and offering no clues. He identified a spot at a warehouse near the children's home, which he believed their bodies had been buried inside the remains of an old brick kiln. And I'll just break in here to say he changed his story during his visit. He originally thought the children were buried under some sand near the beach or something like that. The property owners were reluctant to excavate based only on a psychic's claim, soon bowed to public pressure after publicity helped raise $40,000 to have the building demolished. No remains nor any evidence tied to any members of the Beaumont family was found. In 1996, the building identified by Quasset was undergoing partial demolition and the owners allowed a full search of the site. Once again, no trace was found of the children. Now the page goes on with possible suspects. The latest dig, the main suspect and the reason why the dig is at an old factory site is one of the suspects, Harry Phipps, owned the factory and lived only a block from Glenelg Beach where the children disappeared. So I'm sure there are other clues along the way, but that's the latest thinking of these people who are excavating the site. But let's hear from the man himself via an interpreter in a newsreel or news footage from 1966.
Mr. Croyce believes that they played in a hole or in a dig out, and that is naar mijn mening inschattingen klaar heeft. Yes, and that particular hole or cave must have collapsed.
In my opinion, I have found the spot where the children are, or would be. Where is that spot? Where is that?
Waar ik vanmorgen geweest ben.
Where I was this morning. Near the wall of that storeroom where the children were last.
Where exactly
In
is
here.
that? Well, that's Wilton Street, Somerton Park.
Yes.
That is Wilton Street.
Ik ga, als ik op die plek sta,
Yes.
als ik dus zeg dat ze daar onder
If I say they're buried there, I am sure.
Now, to give you a flavour of the news coverage of the time, while Gerard Quasset was running around Adelaide, being driven around, I should say, to try to tune in with his psychic vibrations or whatever he did. And I will read only one report of the many, many reports that are available. This one comes from the Sun Herald on November the 13th, 1966. Dutch seer. All the fuss upset me. Dutch clairvoyant Gerard Quasset said yesterday he had been so disturbed in Adelaide that he, quote, could not see clearly, end quote. Quote, the people there made so much excitement and fuss, it frightened me and affected my ability to visualize, end quote, he said. Mr. Quasset, looking tired and dejected, gave a brief press conference at Sydney Airport before leaving Australia after a 2-day search for the bodies of the missing Beaumont children. He said the atmosphere in Adelaide had been strange and unfamiliar. This was another thing that spoiled my reception, he said. I am upset at my lack of success. I wanted to be more assistance. Now, what I have found during my research is that Gerard Quasset was not the only psychic who thought they knew where these children were. And many years after the disappearance, and we're going to a report filed here, published here on the 28th of March 1990 in the Canberra Times, we learn of another psychic. Psychic sees missing South Australian children. Adelaide. Police will interview a woman today who claims psychic powers have led her to the burial place of 5 missing Adelaide children, the Beaumonts, Christy Gordon and Joanne Radcliffe. June Cox, 51, said yesterday that she had spoken to the police this week, telling them she believed she knew where the bodies could be found, on Crown land near the Maiponga Reservoir in the Adelaide Hills. She said the children had haunted her for 11 years with visions of where they were buried. Mrs. Cox said she also had visions connecting the disappearance of the children in 1966 and 1973 with the 1979 murder of Alan Barnes and the 1972 drowning of Dr. George Duncan. The Beaumont children, Jane 9, Anna 7 and Grant 4, disappeared from a suburban beach 24 years ago. Christy Gordon and Joanne Radcliffe were abducted from Adelaide Oval in 1973. Despite intensive investigations, their bodies have not been found. 2 weeks ago, in the Adelaide Magistrates Court, a man already in prison for murder and also charged in connection with the Barnes killing was linked with the disappearance of the 5 children. A witness told the court that 43-year-old homosexual Bevan Spencer von Enum had admitted to him that he had killed the children and dumped their bodies in the Maiponga Reservoir. Mrs. Cox said she believed the children were not actually in the reservoir, but in shallow graves nearby. She said the children had talked to her because they wanted their souls at rest. Asked why she had not come forward earlier, she said, quote, "I firmly believe that everything has its time," end quote. And there's a follow-up the following day, the 29th of March 1990, again in the Canberra Times. Beaumont children, clairvoyant lead. Police have interviewed an Adelaide woman who claims her psychic powers led her to the burial place of 5 missing children, but they have declined to comment on the information. A spokesperson for the Major Crime Squad said yesterday detectives had spoken to clairvoyant June Cox, 51, yesterday. Mrs. Cox came forward on Tuesday claiming the bodies of the 3 Beaumont children could be found on crowned land near Maiponga Reservoir in the Adelaide Hills. She said the children had haunted her for 11 years with visions of where they were buried. Now, through doing some more investigation, I have discovered a TV report from the 7 Network discussing June Cox.
The Police Underwater Recovery Squad will soon investigate a clairvoyant's predictions of where the missing Beaumont children are hidden at the Maiponga Reservoir. The clairvoyant, June Cox, is now advising the Major Crime Squad and today told police they're looking in the wrong area.
Early morning and the controversial search for the missing Beaumont children resumes. The divers were quickly set up and in the water, their progress continually monitored from above.
Yeah, Roger JT will tighten up the distance line once you've removed it off the bolt.
While the divers were busy, a clairvoyant who's been following the case for years was making her own observations. The Major Crime Squad has now allowed June Cox into the search area.
That they have actually now said, OK, come down here, wander around, and when you feel certain, then approach us again.
And that's exactly what June did. With the help of compass readings she claims came to her during spiritual contact with the Beaumont children, she's been able to pinpoint where they are. The spot where June Cox believes the bodies are hidden is on a bank close by the reservoir wall. Police divers plan to search that area, but not until later in the week. The Underwater Recovery Squad's been restricted by more than a metre of silt at the base of the reservoir wall. Even lying on top of the silt with their arms extended downwards, divers say they have no chance of touching the bottom. The search continues tomorrow. Peter Caldecott, 7 Nightly News.
And I guess my comment about all of that is what a colossal waste of police time and resources. I wonder what their thinking was at the time. I wonder what their justification was. Given this was 1990, but even then you would hope that people in charge of running major crime would have more sense than to devote such time, effort and money on psychic fantasies. And this should be a lesson in every police academy across the world. So there we are. A revisit to the Beaumont children case of 1966. As I said before, as I speak, the dig is ongoing. And once again, I can only hope, earnestly hope, that they find the children this time.
Hey everyone, it's Brian Dunning from Skeptoid here. I want to extend a special invitation to all of you. In mid-2025, Skeptoid will be celebrating our 1000th podcast episode. So we're throwing a big party by taking 60 of you to the Bermuda Triangle. It's July 7th through the 11th, departing and returning at Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We're having our own Skeptic Conference in our private conference facility aboard ship, plus more Skeptoidy events ashore at stops on Bimini and Key West. Come and celebrate 1,000 episodes of Skeptoid with me and a boatload of special guests in the Bermuda Triangle. You can learn all about it and punch your ticket now at skeptoid.com/events. That's skeptoid.com/events. Reserve your spot now and hope you make it back.
Welcome to part 5 of the continuing misadventures of Psychic Penny and the Galactic Federation. This is a weekly soap opera, and each chapter is written by a different AI. This week, it's the turn of Meta AI. The cast. The narrator sets the scenes and provides transitions, played by Richard Saunders. Psychic Penny, a fake psychic with a flair for the dramatic, played by Adrian Hill. Agent Zorak, a skeptical Galactic Federation officer with a dry sense of humour, played by Kat McLeod. Commander Lyra, a no-nonsense Federation officer who's seen it all, played by Lara Benham. Emperor Snazzleflurp, the goofy leader of the Galactic Federation, played by Maynard. And, playing the part of Vespa, a spy from the planet Nebulon 9, Kathy Reitmeyer. On the mysterious planet of Nebulon 9, our unlikely quartet, Psychic Penny, Commander Lyra, Agent Zorak, and Emperor Snazzleflurp, embarked on a perilous quest for the fabled magic crystals.
Oh, this is thrilling! I've never been on a real adventure before, except that one time, but shh.
The aura is strong here. I sense the crystal's presence.
Save it, Penny. We're here for the crystals, not your theatrics.
Let's focus. We need those crystals to power the Galactic Federation's latest technology.
But they're not alone. A group of fierce space hamsters, guardians of the crystals, have emerged from the shadows.
Oh no! The hamsters! They're attacking!
How convenient. The universe's most powerful psychic can't even predict hamster attacks.
Take cover! Return fire!
The quartet successfully fends off the space hamsters and retrieves the magic crystals.
Well, we did it! We actually did! We did it!
The crystal's energy. It's coursing through me.
Congratulations, Penny. You managed to sense something after it happened.
With crystals in hand, the quartet board their starship, the slightly rusty bucket, ready to return to the Galactic Federation.
Prepare for hyperspace jump. We'll be back in the Federation in no time. Take that, Picard.
Yes, Emperor. All systems are go.
And yes, my talents were invaluable in retrieving the crystals.
Invaluable? I'd say she's more of a liability.
But little do they know, a stowaway is on board, hiding in the shadows.
Time to take down the Emperor and claim the crystals for Nebulon 9. This is the perfect opportunity to strike.
What's going on? Why is the alarm blaring? Like, blare, blare, blare.
We're detecting an unauthorized presence on board, Emperor.
I'll take care of it with my blaster.
I don't think so, Agent Zorak.
Oh no, it's Vespa, the notorious spy from Nebulon 9.
And I'm here to take control of this ship and the magic crystals.
You'll never get away with this, Vespa.
We'll see about that, Emperor Snazzleflurp.
Quick!
The fate of the Galactic Federation hangs in the balance as Vespa takes control of the ship. Will our heroes escape and thwart Vespa's plans? Tune in next time. And that was part 5 of our space opera, Psychic Penny's Adventures or Misadventures. And next week, I wonder what will happen. But next week on episode number 6, we once again use the DeepSeek engine, AI engine, to see what happens next.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, was a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon who wrote about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet produced a free online course of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting tinyurl.com/Skepdoc series. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that is sure to educate and entertain. Find it at tinyurl.com/Skepdoc series.
Remember, I'm sure you do, on last week's episode, we looked at the In Search Of program from 1978 with Leonard Nimoy, In Search Of Water Seekers. And this episode, which I'll link to once again in this week's show notes, was an excellent lesson in critical thinking and looking at logical fallacies from a skeptical point of view. The show itself was certainly not skeptical in the least. It was credulous and full of logical fallacies. And I know that because I listened to the wonderful series of logical fallacies with Michelle Biggersma, broadcast on the Skeptic Zone a few years back. And you can see or hear, or both, because they're on YouTube, that series. If you go to the Skeptic Zone homepage, look down the right-hand side of the page, you'll see Michelle's picture and the link to the logical fallacies. Now, recently, during some of my research, my regular research into skeptical topics throughout digital archives and other archives, I discovered this gem from the Age newspaper, which is in Melbourne, dated Tuesday the 16th of December, 1980, in the television column. Last night, diviners right. And this is a piece by Ian Marshall. Water divining, also known as water dowsing, is one of the more respectable paranormal skills, much more ancient than spoon bending, and certainly more useful. The dowsers wander over apparently barren ground with a couple of rods or a hazel twig clutched in their hands. Then, hey presto, the rods or twigs start to twitch, and there below is the water. According to last night's episode of the Channel 7's interesting documentary series In Search Of, 6 p.m, dowsing is particularly big in Britain. Diviners there have been doing their thing since ancient times, before King Alfred. Christian influence branded it as witchcraft and drove it underground for a time, but then the first Queen Elizabeth made it respectable again by importing some dowsers from Germany. There is now, would you believe, a British Society of Dowsers. What do they drink at their annual dinners? A bunch of professional dowsers who make a living out of telling people where to drill new wells, and even a chap who teaches others how to do it. Perhaps it is a load of old British rubbish? Well, not all scientists are as sceptical as the two who failed to learn the craft. For the president of the British Society of Dowsers turns out to be a university electronics expert who wanders around with rods in each hand, convinced that he can follow underground water flows. As the program makes clear, nobody really knows exactly how it's all done. The dowsers naturally tend to talk a good deal of nonsense about powers too mysterious for explanation. But the scientists don't help much either. One expert hooks up a water diviner to a brainwave machine and talks learnedly about, quote, alpha blocking, end quote, giving way to an, quote, alpha spike, end quote, when the water is found, which does little more than substitute jargon for mystery. So that was published all the way back there in 1980, after Ian Marshall had viewed that episode. Oh, how I would have liked to have been the reviewer way back then, after the thousands of people who have been tested for water divining, our understanding of the idiomotor action, our understanding of the trash, rubbish, pseudoscience machines used in the episode, and so on. Now, why this section isn't exactly a trove, it does go to show that when you're researching online in historical records, you never know what you're going to find.
Chris, what do you call two orthopedists reading an electrocardiogram?
I don't know, Jonathan.
A double-blind study. This is the type of highbrow medical humor you can expect from The Body of Evidence, the best podcast you're not listening to.
But we don't hold it against you.
We answer the burning medical questions of the day
by seeing what the data actually says.
Because wild, unjustified pseudoscience is for the other guys.
Is it safe to take Tylenol when you're pregnant? Should we worry about microplastics harming us? Are there any dietary supplements that will help you perform better? Are the doggos all very good boys?
They are indeed very good boys.
The science on this is clear and unambiguous.
If you're getting your health advice from the Joe Rogan Experience, it may be time to come back to Earth and listen to The Body of Evidence.
Reality can be nice too. Come join us on this planet.
We also talk to experts, and there's a teddy bear.
There is. We also talk about dogs a lot.
They're better than humans.
The Body of Evidence.
Wherever you get your podcasts and at bodyofevidence.ca.
Hello, everybody. This is Adrienne Hill here in Calgary, Canada, and I'm going to read you the highlights from the Australian Skeptics newsletter. Don't forget you can sign up to this newsletter at skeptics.com.au and get the full report complete with all the links every other week right into your inbox. But let's see what Tim Mendham has for us this week. Hi all, says Tim. So, you have an anti-vaxxer who promotes the false MMR autism link and suggests COVID-19 was targeted to attack Caucasians and Black people. The most immune were Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. In any case, he says 99% of COVID deaths occurred in people who have vitamin D deficiencies. He doubts the role of HIV and AIDS, believes that mass shootings were caused by prescription drugs and that Lyme disease is likely to be an engineered bioweapon. What do you do with him? Good question, Tim. Naturally, you put him in charge of a health budget in the order of $1.8 trillion annually. Something that has been described as akin to, quote, putting a flat earther in charge of NASA, end quote. RFK Jr., of course, says he has been mischaracterized or misunderstood with his conspiratorial claims. And certainly in the past, he has done some good work, especially in his environmental activism and the law. But few outside of the Trump camp, the anti-vax brigade, and almost all of the Republicans in Congress who recently confirmed his appointment, think he's suitable to be U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services. Not his own family, and not qualified medical experts. The sole naysayer among the Republicans was the soon-to-retire Mitch McConnell, a polio survivor. Will his appointment negatively affect vaccination rates in the U.S.? Will his appointment have any impact in other parts of the world, encouraging other governments to appoint similarly conspiratorially minded office bearers? Or will it be a storm in a teacup, and after 4 years or less, RFK Jr.'s impact will be less than feared? I sure hope so. As they say, time will tell. But it's not off to a good start. Read on, Tim. Okay, Tim, I'll do just that. Have Seventh-day Adventists canned naturopath O'Neill? Banned naturopath Barbara O'Neill has been using her membership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and its venues to promote her dangerous misinformation on alternative health treatments. It now turns out that the Adventist Health Ministries of the U.S.-based General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists sent out an updated statement last year outlining a set of concerns with O'Neill's activities and concluding, quote, "We are not able to recommend her as a speaker for churches or any gatherings," end quote. Some comments by O'Neill's supporters on the statement suggested a conspiracy by church leadership, with Big Pharma, of course, and that local churches were not obliged to follow the advice of the General Conference. Richard Saunders also notes that O'Neill has a large presence on TikTok, and she's one of the highest views we have had over the last couple of years on Wikipedia. A full report will be in the March issue of The Skeptic. Manipulated TV footage used to spread false chemtrails claim. A clip from a current affairs talk show has been manipulated to make it appear as if the presenter says people are being, quote, slowly poisoned by chemtrails, end quote. In the original TV segment from Australia's Network 10, which featured skeptic Ken MacLeod debunking the chemtrail myths, presenter Angela Bishop actually refers to chemtrails as a conspiracy theory and an allegation. Psychic, supposed fraud and liar, denied bail after airport stop. A woman accused of defrauding hundreds of thousands of dollars from victims by performing curse removals and spiritual cleanings will remain behind bars over fears she could flee the country. She was stopped at Sydney Airport with a one-way international ticket. And yes, we know, she probably didn't see that coming. Paranormal beliefs are associated with stress. Individuals who tend to believe in spiritual apparitions, UFOs, and other paranormal happenings are more susceptible to stress and less good at coping, or vice versa, according to UK research. On the other hand, people who adhere to New Age paranormal spirituality do not demonstrate similar impacts on their well-being. I wonder what the difference is. court judgments on astrology and science. The Indian Supreme Court, in a judgment in 2004, ruled that astrology is a science. Oh dear. This longish article from India shows how the judgment used old, in fact, very old, definitions to approve the pseudoscience in university studies, similar to another court assessment of creation science in U.S. schools. Gibson is not the only bad apple. A survey of Australian, Canadian, and American TikTok users found 87% of millennials and Generation Zers got at least some health advice from social media. Ripe for the picking, and the pickers are out there in numbers. See our in-depth coverage of celebrated cancer influencers in the March issue of The Skeptic. Valet Roy Arnett. Roy Arnett, OAM, or Medal of the Order of Australia, was a formidable treasurer for Victorian skeptics for many years and contributed largely to sorting out the group's constitution. The, quote, Prince of Pith, end quote, was a regularly published contributor to The Age's letter pages, wrote an atheist in the army in 2009. The Skeptic, March 2009, page 48. He was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for service to the preservation of military history and to veterans, and wrote monthly cryptic crosswords for the Vic Skeptics website. Quote, Roy was humorous, warm, charming, and good company. He has been greatly missed in skeptic circles since his health made it difficult to maintain his regular and much valued skeptical activities, end quote. Say old friends Terry Kelly and Ken Greatorex. We're putting the finishing touches to the March 2025 issue of The Skeptic, featuring a look at folklore, the fun, fashions, and fakes, as well as an in-depth look at 2 cancer cure influencers in the news and on TV, the second best spooners, Wellness Woo, Coulthardt's latest definitive proof of UFOs, at least this week's version, and a full report on Skepticon XL. In the meantime, the December issue of The Skeptic is out, which looks at the not-so-normal mind, a history of the Skeptic's challenge, a history of manifesting dangerous treatments, and much more. You can read the article on manifesting your wishes in the preview of the December 2024 issue, available on our website. Items of interest. Why successful horror films are set inside houses. This is an article for students of movie methodologies, with a reflection on standard ghost hunting tropes. The home has long been an iconic setting for horror films, but from the 2010s onward, it has become almost a cliché, an enduring trend that began in 2007 with Paranormal Activity. 15 paranormal myths that just won't die. They just won't die no matter how much science and common sense is used. Why do ghosts only come out after dark? Is Bigfoot conveniently dodging every HD camera? You know, the usual suspects debunked. Briefly. Ghost lanterns may not be as creepy as once believed. According to a study for the U.S. Geological Survey, the South Carolina orbs that appear over train tracks in the area, slam doors, I didn't know orbs could slam doors, and other paranormal activity may be the result of earthquakes. Now that would shake up believers. Another definitive film on UFOs. As the premiere at SXSW approaches, the question remains, will the age of disclosure finally provide the proof that believers have been waiting for? Or will it be yet another tantalizing but ultimately unconvincing piece of the UFO puzzle? The truth will be clear any day now. as they like to say. Inside the CIA's original Stargate project. This includes alien pyramids on Mars, time travel, and devil sketches. Bit of a potted history of the secret psychic experiments carried out in the 70s and 80s. It's an interesting story, but it's annoyingly laid out. This story could go up to the top, as it does take a serious look, but the subject is just so silly. Well, that's all for the newsletter this week. And just the other day, Richard and I were talking about him visiting here in 2023 for the first Western Canadian Reason, or Week in Reason, conference. I had told him that once he lands, I would drive and wait for him at the cell waiting area. But I kept getting these confusing texts from him asking where the cell waiting area was. And I said, just stay where you are, and was asking him if he was through customs and had his bags yet. He said yes, but he couldn't find the cell waiting area. I told him to stay where he was and I would drive to him. Richard was looking for an actual cell, like a room where he had to wait for me. He had never heard the phrase cell waiting area before, and I'm guessing most of you in North America will know what I am talking about. It is short for cell phone waiting area, and according to Copilot AI, quote, a cell waiting area at an airport, also known as a cell phone lot, is a designated parking area where drivers can wait for arriving passengers. These lots are typically located near the airport terminals, but not directly at the terminal itself. The purpose of a cell waiting area is to provide a convenient and free space for drivers to park while they wait for a call or text from their arriving passengers, indicating that they have collected their baggage and are ready to be picked up. And what is the purpose? Cell waiting areas help reduce congestion around the terminal by preventing drivers from circling the airport repeatedly or parking in unauthorized areas. They also enhance safety by providing a designated space for waiting vehicles. Once the passengers are ready, the driver can proceed directly to the pickup area, making the process smoother and more efficient, end quote. At least I remembered to pick him up last year for the Week in Reason conference. I thought he was arriving 2 days later. I put the wrong date in my calendar, and he still hasn't forgiven me for that one. Oh, and speaking of Week in Reason, the tickets went on sale this week. There are a limited number available at a reduced price, and the lineup of speakers looks excellent. Please do check it out at weekinreason.com. Until next time, this is Adrienne Hill signing off from Calgary, Canada.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast this week. Now, coming up in Sydney on Thursday night at the Occidental Hotel, right here in downtown Sydney near Wynyard train station, we have Skeptics in the Pub, kicking off around 6 o'clock. Everybody is welcome, and there's always an interesting talk and spoon-bending lessons and lots of fun at Skeptics in the Pub. It's been going now for over 20 years, and I look forward to seeing you there. And thank you again to my sponsors, the people who chip in. We had a new sponsor just this week. Thank you very much. By PayPal or Patreon, as little as $5 a month, or what you can spare. Not even the cup. You know what? $5 would hardly get you a coffee anymore, regardless. So it's not very much. And especially if you're in the United States and you chip in or put in a monthly contribution, your dollar goes a lot further because of the exchange rate. So for every, say, $10 you contribute to the Skeptic Zone, it magically turns into something like $15 or $16. Coming up on next week's show, a particularly exciting episode in the Psychic Penny misadventures. And I think the Trove segment will return next week. I've discovered a new source of online newspaper archives, and I'm having a great deal of fun diving through those. But until then, until next week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
I'll take care of it with my blaster. Pew, 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 pew.
You'll never get away with this, Vesper. Were you in that James Bond movie? Oh, I cried at the end.
Outrageous. Outrageous. Next time I would like a bowl of M&Ms, but just the yellow ones, please.
Just the yellow ones? Isn't it normally the red ones people like?
We have to predict, right?
You have to, yes. Well, hello once again from Virtual Reality. We have the virtual dice. I'm with Psychic Penny, otherwise known as Adrian Hill. Hello, Adrian.
Hello, I'm going to make some predictions today.
I'm with Lara Benham. Hello, Lara.
Hello.
Now, Lara's just going to use her die here. It's a six-sided. I predict 1.
2.
I was going to predict 2. I knew you were going to predict 2
as well.
I'm going to predict 4.
All right, here it comes. And it's rolling, and it's a
3.
A 3. Okay.
It is.
Nobody.
So I'm going
Right, who's going next?
I'll have a go next. I've picked up my die here.
Handy.
I'm going to throw it. And I'm
6.
6. All right, says Lara. I'm going to predict 2. And Adrian?
I'm going to predict 1. Because
Here it
Psychic
comes.
Penny is number 1.
And it is 1.
A 1.
A 1.
Oh! I told you. I'm
Yeah.
psychic.
Penny is psychic.
I shouldn't doubt you, Psychic Penny. And yours,
Oh, I
you're
know.
about to use yours. I'm going to predict a 3.
I'm going to do the Susan Gerbeck 5. And I'm going to putt mine.
And
All right.
I'll go with a 2.
Here it comes. Rolling, and it's a
5.
It is.
That was fixed.
It is a 5. And then I
5.
knocked it over.
5 for Susan.
5
Gerbeck.
for Susan. Do you realize I've
So you've got
had
2 out of 3.
I've gotten
Ooh.
2 out of 3. Psychic
do-
Penny is really psychic.
Shall we do a supplementary?
Yep.
Definitely.
All right, here it comes. I'm holding
Got
up
mine
mine.
in my hand if you want.
Yep. 4.
I'm going to do a 6.
I'm going to go with a 1.
All
Because
right,
he already dropped it and it was a 1.
here it comes.
That's another way to be psychic.
That's it. Here it goes. It's up in the air. It's coming down. It's a 4. 4.
No, it was a 1 the first time and that was
Was
what
it?
I was predicting.
All right.
I've lost my ball.
Where's it gone? Thank you, Psychic Penny
I don't know.
and Commander Lyra. I'll see
Oh.
you in the next space adventure.
I can't believe I got 2 of them. That's really funny.
Yeah.
I should be Psychic Penny more often.